Welcome back to Smashing here. So time for my preview for the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Our first week, or first race, outside of Europe in quite a long time, and kind of what's seen as kind of the final leg of the season, which is going to be a combination of races in the Middle East as well as races in North America. Of course, Azerbaijan is in neither of those, being in Central Asia, but that's the end of the geography portion of today's video. And let's get back to F1. So first taking a look at last year's race. This was one of three races not won by Max Verstappen in 2023. One, of course, by his teammate Sergio Perez. Verstappen, of course, came second, and then Charles Leclerc of Ferrari rounded out the podium. It was a race that was won by Perez in the pit stops. He pitted under a safety car caused by Nick de Vries, and that, of course, allowed him to basically get ahead of Verstappen, and then Verstappen simply unable to retake the lead. A really bad weekend from Nick de Vries. He had two crashes, one in the Grand Prix and one in qualifying as well. In the sprint, this time last year, Russell and Verstappen made contact on that opening lap, which prompted quite a discussion from the two of them in Parc Fermé after that sprint. And of course, this was Sergio Perez's last, or at least most recent, I guess is a better way of putting it, race win. So track itself, the Baku City Circuit, 51 laps is what we should have on Saturday, Sunday. The track is quite long, 6.003 kilometers, and the race lap record is a 1:43.009, set by Charles Leclerc in 2019. And despite the very long straight of Baku's circuit, the average lap speed of that fastest lap is 210 kilometers per hour, not just 210 kilometers, the H there, and that ranks 19th of the 24 circuits on this year's calendar. Two DRS zones, one going down the main straight into turn 1 and then another one going into turn 3. In terms of overtaking opportunities, turn 1's your best bet, but in theory, if you make a good run out of turn 2, you could make an overtake into turn 3. And there are quite a few pinch points as well, places where the risk of having an accident, having a crash is pretty high. You have the castle section starting at turn 8 as well, and you also have the exit of turn 15, where if you carry just a little bit too much speed into that corner, it can be very, very easy to completely destroy your rear suspension, for example, or even your front suspension, crashing into the Tech Pro barrier on the outside of that corner. Street circuit, so generally quite bumpy, not as smooth as a permanent race circuit. Lots of slow to medium speed corners, your 90-degree right-hand corners, left-hand corners through the opening sector, as well as some of the corners towards the end of the lap as well. Not necessarily those in turn 3, you basically just have that one corner, but a mixture of straights and corners. And because of that, the long straights mixed with those corners, you do need a bit of aero efficiency to do well at this track, and having good brakes is also key. Being able to brake well into turn 1 is pretty important around this track. And because it's a street circuit, because of, for example, the very tight nature of the castle section, and just with how close the walls are at certain points in the track, there is a pretty high risk of safety cars. So with the pit strategy, as we saw last year with Verstappen, if you pit at the wrong moment, if you pit a little bit too early, you can come out worse for wear there and come out behind your rivals. Despite the fact that you have that really long straight, overtaking is pretty difficult. Not sure, I think probably because of similar reasons to Monza. We're generally not running high downforce, you're running a little bit lower downforce at this track, and because of that, DRS is not as effective. It can also be a combination of other factors. It's a very dusty, dirty track because it's a street circuit, so that means it's very, very hard to kind of go offline and try to overtake cars as well. So those two things, I think, can combine to make it a difficult track to overtake on. Taking a look at the schedule for this weekend. For Friday, 20 degrees and sunny during the afternoon session, and we do have F2 this weekend as well. So for F2, free practice 11 in the morning, FP1 1:30 in the afternoon, qualifying for F2 3 in the afternoon, FP2 5 in the evening, and then moving on to Saturday, 26 degrees, so a little bit cooler than Friday, and sunny, partially cloudy for pretty much the entire weekend. Not really much chance of precipitation. I'm pretty sure through F1's almost 1 decade run and in Azerbaijan, I don't think it's ever actually rained there as well. So that's a streak that will probably continue this year as well. But Saturday, FP3, 12:30 p.m. The F2 sprint race, 2:50 in the afternoon, and then finishing up with qualifying at 4. This is a qualifying session that can be a bit strange with it being so late in the afternoon. And with the fact that you can have we have had years where there's been quite numerous red flags in qualifying. It means that at the end of the qualifying session, the track can get very, very cool, which means that the qualifying times actually get slower, which is actually the opposite of what normally is. But that is something that we've definitely observed at Azerbaijan, where the track temperature gets too cold. They're not able to get the heat into the tires, lack of high-speed corners, and they're not really able to improve on their laps late in qualifying. So that's something that we might see on Saturday. Sunday, 26 degrees, again, sunny, partially cloudy. F2 feature race, 11:35, and the Grand Prix is at 3 p.m. sharp. I think before we go over best and worst, I'll go over this note at the bottom. So, of course, Kevin Magnussen got himself banned for this Grand Prix, second driver to be banned in the last 12 years, I would say. Last driver banned in quite a while. And of course, also the first driver banned under the 12-point system. He'll be replaced by Oliver Behrman, like I predicted. And of course, he'll be making his Haas debut. So, of course, Behrman driving for Haas full-time next year, 2025. This will be a chance for Haas to kind of see how he can do in a full race weekend. Good chance for Behrman as well. Of course, Azerbaijan's a bit of a tricky circuit, but this was a track he did very, very well at in F2 last year, getting the double, winning the sprint and the feature race last year. And of course, with Franco Colapinto also being driving it this weekend, of course, he'll be driving the rest of the season. A bunch of young, very inexperienced drivers at this track should, again, possibly higher likelihood than normal of a safety car or a red flag, just given how inexperienced the two of them are. Now, finishing up, looking at the best and worst drivers in qualifying at this track, a couple surprises in both. You would expect, I think many would expect both Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc to be in the best category, but actually not the case. So for best, you have two drivers at 100%. You have Norris and Fernando Alonso. Both of them have out-qualified their teammates every year they've been at this track. And then you have Pierre Gasly third at 80%. And in terms of average out-qualifying margin, for Norris, it's just shy of 0.4 of a second. For Alonso, 3.5 of a second. And for Pierre Gasly, it's just a shy over 0.4 of a second. In the worst category, you have two drivers who have shown up here in this category a couple of times this year. I think you have one driver who's a pretty big surprise, and that's Carlos Sainz at 0%. He has never out-qualified a teammate at this track. But again, two of his teammates that he's had the last 5 years have been Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, who again are pretty good qualifiers at this track. So maybe it's just a case of he's been a bit unlucky with the fact that he's had very, very good teammates. And then let's see, for number 2, Valtteri Bottas, 29%, and then number 3, Yuki Tsunoda at 30%. In terms of average gaps for those drivers, for Sainz, 0.386 seconds, for Bottas, 0.101 seconds, and for Tsunoda, 0.423 seconds. So again, look to see for those drivers to have, maybe the guys in the best category do a bit better. Maybe the drivers in the worst category doing a little bit worse than usual in qualifying. Now, finishing up this video as always with my prediction for the weekend. I think it's going to be, as we've seen in F1 last, I would say 3 months at this point. Very, very unpredictable, very hard to say who's going to finish where. But with that 100% qualifying record, it's kind of hard to argue against a Lando Norris win, especially after how things last time out in Monza ended. With that qualifying record, and again, McLaren should be pretty good at this track. They've overall been the best car the last month or 2 months, or so, I would say. So Norris should be able to win this Grand Prix. Number 2, I think I'm actually going to go with Charles Leclerc. Again, even when the car is not on top of his game like it was last year, he still finds ways to get on the podium. And this is a track that he's very, very good at, and he's taken pole positions here really when he shouldn't. I remember he got pole here in 2021 up against the might of the Mercedes and the Red Bull that year. So honestly, would not be surprised if we had a shock Charles Leclerc pole position as well for this weekend, but I don't think they're going to be able to have the race pace to compete with the McLarens. But again, that's something that we easily could have said at Monza as well. So I think it'll be an interesting fight between the two of them. Rounding out the podium, I think that's a bit of a tricky one. I think it would be easy to put Max Verstappen on the podium as well, just given how consistent he is. But again, last time out in Monza definitely did not go to plan. I think this is a track that does reward aero efficiency, and I think at this point that's the one redeemable trait that Red Bull have. That being said, with how badly things have gone in recent months, and the fact that this is not a track that Verstappen generally does too well at, I think I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri rounding out the podium. So you have a McLaren 1-3, and with that, they'd basically be guaranteed to take the lead in the Constructors' Championship should that result come to fruition. But there you go. There's my preview for the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Race I'm looking forward to, less for the racing, because generally the racing's not been great, but it's generally one where, if things go absolutely crazy, they can go completely off the walls like we saw in 2017, like we saw in 2018 as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.